Hey Root Supply fam, it's your girl Reese, and I am going to be live tonight doing a new moon in Cancer read. So, alright, let me just put the tag in for a second. Okay. Okay. All the emojis. Alright. So, I got everything pretty much set up over here. I'm just gonna light the incense, wait for some folks to come in if they do. If not, you already know I will still keep the show on the road and you can watch the playback. And I'll be posting these on YouTube as well too. So make sure y'all check out The Root Supply on YouTube. And I might just be putting some exclusive content on there that might not be on Instagram. So be sure to look it up, subscribe, and everything. So, let me just, mind you, my room has completely turned into a shop. Because I have like mad boxes of just like inventory right now. I mean, this is a cute situation over here in like this vicinity, but you know, and plus I have an event coming up, so that's pretty much why I have so much inventory. But you know, cleansing the airways, Bernadette Nag Champa. I have 432 hertz music playing in the background. I seen this clip online that I think Ninth and New Moon posted about the significance of 432 hertz music, which basically it's like the miracle tone, and the numbers, the sequence of the numbers ration out to like what's that number? Kind of like something to do with sacred geometry, I believe. I'm not 100% certain on it, but I just know it's like dope vibes. I like the sounds. So I've been listening to a lot of that in my morning rituals, and just like throughout the day, I'll just have that playing as I'm cleaning and working on stuff throughout for the shop and whatnot, or just doing like ritual work or cleaning and stuff like that. I mean, actually lately, I've been doing a lot of like prosperity work and I've been listening to like hip hop and like real, you know, what's that song by 50 Cent? I get money, I get, you know, real gutter, but I run New York. You know, that's been the vibes. You know, I have like this ring light going on and it reflects on my glasses, so I think I might just take my glasses off for this, because everything that I need is close enough for me to be able to see it. So yeah, I guess I'm pretty excited. It is a new moon today. And prior to the reading, I did want to like talk a little bit on here. So my previous post that I posted on social media was just kind of like a reintroduction of myself for those who may have followed the Root Supply like a long time ago, or people who are new to the page and don't know anything about it. So here I am. Sorry, my little fur baby is whining in the background, but she's just gonna have to sit here for a little bit. But basically, I'm Nerese. You can also call me Reese. I am the owner and creator of The Root Supply, and I created this shop about, I would say like 3 years ago, and I've kind of like operated it on and off. I pretty much started it towards the beginning of my like spiritual journey, just out of feeling like the need to fill a void. I was working at a metaphysical shop at the time. Shout out to them, much love to them. But there's nothing against them, but it's like most metaphysical shops, when you look at them, you don't really see much of the spiritual side, with the roots of like African roots represented there, unless you see stuff that's Egyptian. And prior to Egypt being named Egypt, it was actually Kemet. But if you have Sacred Woman, or if you've heard of her Sacred Woman by Queen Afua, I would recommend reading that book. And she does a lot of healing work for just the woman, and a lot of healing with the womb for women. Give me a second, hold on. I'm like, Angie, my baby, come on, go ahead. You're gonna be locked out for a second though. Okay, baby. Sorry. Y'all my babies too. I was in mommy mode for a moment. Okay, anyway. So, Queen Afua's Sacred Woman. She talks a lot about the history of ancient Egypt, but she calls it Kemet because that's its actual name, prior to, I believe, Greece kind of like overruling it. So yeah, definitely check that book out. Any women, regardless of your journey of where you are, whether you're an evolved healer or if you're new to the path, like it's a beautiful read. And I believe she also just put out a extended revised version of it, because I believe it was either the 20th or the 25th anniversary of the book. So definitely check that out. But my point in mentioning that is, in metaphysical spaces, all you would see is Egypt. And as in terms of like spirituality, like you have like Hinduism, you have Buddhism, all those statues and kind of like paraphernalia for that, but you don't see anything representing African spirituality. And I get it, people, when you hear voodoo, oh my god, and especially if you don't know anything about it, there can kind of be this skepticism about it. But like I said in a previous live, there's Ouija boards all through these shops. Even when I worked at AC Moore, mind you, I worked with like mad witches over there, and it was a very interesting stage in my life, spiritually and just in general. But I was like, my spiritual muscles were like flexing there, because we had a Ouija board in that store, and there was some like interesting spiritual stuff going on there while I was working there. That's a whole nother live for another time. But my point is, that's a form of divination, and they sell tarot cards and stuff like that. And I understand, for one aspect, a lot of these spiritual practices are very private, and a lot of details you don't want to put out there just to keep the tradition sacred. But just the general knowledge of it, I feel like, is misinterpreted and fear-based due to media and the film industry, and just ignorance, like lack of knowledge. And yes, like there are things that can be fearful, but so can Wicca. Like, there's certain things that, and with Ouija boards and just or tarot, you don't like, you get these things, and if you don't have any like knowledge of like, spiritually cleansing yourself and protecting yourself and stuff like that, you don't know what spirit can be talking to you, regardless. So, yeah, so basically, long story short, I just felt like there was a lack of representation in those spaces. And I felt like, even if there was a representation, which you do see in botanicas, which are like mostly like Latin owned, that I've seen in my area, and I rarely see, unless it's online, but just in my area, like stores that I can walk into. Actually, shout out to Diego Botanica. I've never actually been to that store physically, but it is based in North New Jersey, which is another city that's dear to me because that was where I was born. Even though I didn't grow up in Newark, I have family there, and that is a Botanica that is Black owned, that has, you know, spiritual, just everything there. There's so many things. I shop there. So yeah, aside from Yale Botanica, like in my personal area where I'm at daily frequently, I don't see Black owned shops or botanicas that have African spiritual, you know, anything. So I was like, you know, they say when you don't see something, create something, you know. And, you know, at this moment, I have like a limited amount of things that's geared specifically to African spirituality because I'm still like, you know, getting inventory together for the shop. But I did want to get new stuff, just because I was no longer wrapping the smudge sticks anymore. But I do have a bunch of new bundles that's going to be on the website very soon. I'm going to be working on that for the weekend. So if y'all check that out, I'll have some new things. I just picked up some eucalyptus and, Yoruba, and what else? I have like a bunch of stuff. Cedar, like a bunch of new bundles that I'm really excited about. And yeah, so anyway, so I felt like there was a void that needed to be filled, and I felt like I jumped into the business a little prematurely because I myself didn't know enough about it. But I felt like, okay, I've been in retail for a long time. I've been a manager several times. I know how to run a store, so, you know, why not run my own store, you know? And I'm very much about entrepreneurship and Black ownership and just creating spaces and creating worlds where we're represented. So that was my intention. And I felt like at the time, like I said, I was like, I didn't know enough about it, and I wasn't as evolved spiritually to even, I don't know, like, not, because I feel like there's people who might not be, like, there's people who run these shops and might not be a part of the spiritual practice, but like have a store just because they can sell it, you know. But I don't want to be like that. Like, I want to actually have the spiritual background to be able to speak to the items that I provide in my store, and, you know, from experience to say, yeah, I've used it in these incidences and I've overcome this, and, or, you know, I practiced this, and so I wanted to speak more about my spiritual journey and just like my background spiritually. So because I briefly talked about it on the post, just like on a spiritual standpoint, but not really the history of like how I got into it. So first and foremost, I grew up Christian. I went to several schools that were Christian. I went to a school that was like a part of a cathedral in elementary school, and then in high school I went to a Catholic school, and like my family was Christian. We didn't go to church a whole lot. I mean, granted, I was going to church every day, but yeah, because the church that my family was a part of was about like an hour and some change away from the house that we moved to when we moved to my town in Trenton. So yeah, I grew up very much a part of understanding Christianity, and I think at the time growing up, bless you. I'm sorry, my dad's like over there. But I think at the time, not that I felt a disconnect with Christianity, but I felt like growing up there were certain things that didn't add up to me as a kid, and like I would always question, like, okay, you know, in school we learned about dinosaurs, and they said dinosaurs came like, you know, many years before humans. So I was like, all right, if we got dinosaurs and we have artifacts in the bones, like, you know, dug up from the earth, that was proof that these dinosaurs have been here. How was Adam and Eve the first humans or the first living beings on earth? You know, it was just something about that story that just didn't make sense to me. And I would always question that, and nobody would give me a straight answer on that. Or they would say, like, you know, it's a metaphorical thing. So I was just like, but why y'all kicking this like this legit, you know? And then from that point, it always kind of like made me have the mentality to like always look further into things versus what's just being told to me. And, you know, growing up, you know, because Christianity is very mainstream, is what I like to say. You know, anytime you question it, you know, people kind of like ridicule you, or, you know, and it's like, oh, don't question God, or don't question this. But like, you know, it's human to question things. It's human to, you know, have further questions and wanting to have a deeper understanding about things. And then I would say maybe like 3 years ago, in the start of my spiritual journey, I felt like the more that I learned about African spirituality and how it was demonized, and how as Black people we were, forced, well, Christianity was forced upon us through the slave trade and through the African diaspora. And, you know, after just learning how Black folks were tortured and killed for practicing their spiritual beliefs prior to being enslaved, you know, it just made me have like this resentment towards Christianity at that time. And then I just completely just like rejected it for a while. And I was just like, you know, it's just so wrong. And like, you know, why don't people know this? You know, and like there's people who do know that, and then they're just like, no, but you know, this is what got us through. And you know, and so at that time I was very like against Christianity, and I was just very upset, and I was just like all about African spirituality without really having a full understanding of it or guidance to kind of like teaching me about it. And then I've had several experiences. You know, I would say my start to spirituality wasn't really all that smooth. But I didn't give up on it just because I felt like, you know, there was something that I probably wasn't understanding, or there was something that I wasn't doing correctly. But I just feel like after knowing what I know, I can't go back, you know. And then I would say, I won't go into full detail about this particular situation, but I started to warm up to Christianity again maybe like 2 years ago. Well, actually, yeah, about 2 years ago, because it came up in a reading that with a African spiritual priestess, you know, don't completely cut off Christianity, because a lot of your ancestors who were closer to you in the lineage, you know, that's what they needed, and that's what they used to help them get through. That's how they prayed. That's how they you know, that's how they overcame a lot of the strife that they had to. And so with that perspective, I was like, okay. So she was like, you know, don't completely throw away the Bible, which I didn't, you know, because I know there's a lot of like power in the Psalms. So that would be like my only thing. But she was like, you know, don't throw away the Bible. Like, keep, you know, your ancestors want you to still, you know, be connected to that. And it's very important to them. So I kept that in mind. And then I would say maybe a year later, I had like this rock bottom experience in life that I won't go too much into. I might talk about it in another live, but basically I was in a hospital for a period of time, and at that point I was having so many spiritual moments, like just like the craziest things were happening, just with like just something simple would be like, okay, like there would be this like common room where like we would have music playing, and it would be like the same songs. It would just be the same few songs on repeat or whatever, as radio stations do. And then when certain people would call me, like their favorite song would start to play, and like disrupt the you know, the program. And I was just like, wow. Because my thing is, you know, it'd be one thing if those songs were in rotation with the regular music, but it was just crazy to me how like while I was calling certain people, while certain people called me, like, out of nowhere, like, their favorite song played on the radio. And it was other incidences and situations where I was just like, okay, I know there's more going on spiritually than what I'm seeing in the physical world. Hey, how you doing? So I was just like, wow, this was crazy to me, because I was going through like this spiritual evolution while like getting out of this rock bottom experience. And so basically the point that I wanted to get to was, there was this there's this nurse at the hospital. She wasn't a nurse in my unit, but she was this black woman who had like these rings, and she reminded me of my friend's mom, who was like very like spiritual, and she's kind of like woke in that way. She's not like super in it, but she gets it. She reminded me of her, but like she just looked like this gypsy. And every time I would see her or we would make eye contact, we would kind of have like this thing. All right, cool. Thanks for popping in. I appreciate you. Yeah, I feel, hey, go ahead with the live life. I see you out here. Okay, flexing on the gram. But yeah, this lady, she, every time I would see her, I would just have like this like spiritual moment. And I was like, okay, she would, every time she would pop up within like the hospital, like I would just, it would be like a reassuring thing. Like I was good, I was okay. But yeah, it was very interesting. But it was this one time where I was like, in my room, and, you know, at that point, like I was very disconnected from the outside world. And like, you know, when you are able to disconnect from like computers and TVs and, you know, just social media and all that stuff, and it's just you know, and you just have to face yourself. You know, at one point I was able to have my guitar with me, so I ended up writing this song while I was there. But at another section I wasn't able to have my guitar, so it was just like my voice, you know, because when I played guitar I would play very quiet. But at one point I just felt like a caged bird, just waiting to be free. And I just started singing out loud and fearlessly, and didn't care like who thought anything, you know. And it was one time she came by my room and she was like, you know, sing some gospel music to keep the devil away. And I was like, okay. And so I was thinking about, I'm like, okay, what gospel music do I know? And like, don't get me wrong, I grew up hearing gospel music, and I like grew up singing songs like when I was in school, but it was like very classical, and I'm more of a like R&B kid, very much R&B and soul. But I wasn't like a fan of gospel music at that point or growing up. Like I loved Kirk Franklin growing up, you know, just because that was like a family thing. So I was thinking like, wow, like I don't know as many gospel songs as I thought I did. I mean, I did know some songs, but I didn't know like all the words and like, you know, so I was like, okay. And then after that experience, I had reconnected with an old friend who was a part of a church that she had grew up in, and asked me to be a part of it and sing in the choir. And I was a little hesitant about it just because I was like, you know, I don't know what they're going to do with a little witch like me. Like, I don't know. Because like I knew my spiritual practices, I wasn't going to, you know, disconnect from that. So, and my thing was, I was like, if anything, I would go for my Christian ancestors, and I would sing for my Christian ancestors. And I feel like that would give me an opportunity to, you know, learn the songs. Because at first I just joined the choir before I even went to a service. I was just like, my first service I was in the choir, didn't know none of the songs like that. The songs that they would go over in rehearsal would be like one song, but in church they would sing like 5 songs for different parts of the service, and it would be songs that they all knew because they grew up in the church. And I'm like, y'all, I need to know the songs that y'all singing, because I mean, I could wing it, because like, you know, I could wing it to a point where it's like, all right, I can harmonize with what y'all doing, or I could just like play it off a little bit, but I need to know the words, you know. But it was still a beautiful experience, and it's still a great church. I still have love for that church, and every now and then I might pop in on a service because they do it through Zoom since of the pandemic, and just because like the pastor has great sermons, and you know, and I would say Bossy Bruja has this saying, I think, I don't know where she got the saying from, but I remember hearing it first from her. And it's like, eat the fish but spit the bones. You know, take what fulfills you and what works for you. But, you know, if there's anything that just doesn't, then it's okay. And that's something that I kind of like took with me in a lot of situations where it's like, you know what, I might not agree with most of what you're saying, but this one little nugget of like info or one nugget of a gem, I will cherish that and I will pay attention to that. You know, but there was just certain moments where like in the service, like pastor would talk about like, you know, like homosexuality and stuff like that, and I'm like, I'm gay, I'm into spirituality, I'm into conjure, like I don't know what y'all gonna do with me, you know. So, you know, and I felt like I was in a situation where I had to be a closet witch again, and I didn't want to be that. And I mean, granted, I'm not one of those people. Well, in the beginning, I felt like I was screaming it from the rooftops, without really having much understanding or knowledge of my like abilities and stuff like that just yet. But now, you know, I have no problem talking about it if you ask me straight up. You know, if you do one of those things where you could try to like hint it, you know, to like suggest it in a conversation, then I'm not going to get into that. I'm just like, no, if you ask me straight up, like, you know, what do you like practice, or like, you know, what's your spiritual journey like, or anything like that, I'm open to talking about it, just because I feel like that conversation is important, especially, you know, in my journey of liberating African spiritual practices, and, you know, taking away the stigma and just the negative ideology around it. So yeah, I was a part of the church for a period of time. This was like last year. And then, you know, with like the pandemic and just like certain things going on in my life, I just kind of like separated myself a little bit. Not intentionally, it was just like life kind of happened. And, you know, I still have love for Christian folks, and I have nothing against them. You know, it's just certain things, you know, just with the history of Christianity that bothers me. Actually, Louisa Teague, who wrote Jambalaya, there's this interview that she does that's on YouTube that's really beautiful, and she talks about how she got into African spirituality, and she was saying, you know, when she was a kid back in the days, you know, her family had to travel, because she grew up in the South. I think she grew up in Louisiana, in New Orleans, I believe. And her family would have to go a ways out of town to go to a black church, but there was a white church in the neighborhood. And so she was just like, you know, if we're praying to the same God and we have the same practice, why do I have to be separated based on my skin? So it was one time she went into the white church as a young girl out of like rebellion, and they started to like, you know, attack her basically. And she was a kid at this point, and they were like throwing rocks at her, and, you know, and she was like, you know, if this is how Christian folks treat me because of the color of my skin, then I don't want anything to do with that, you know, basically. And I respect that, and I get that, and I feel like, you know, the whole segregation era was just, you know, just mind-boggling that was even something that black people had to go through. And I can only imagine from a spiritual standpoint what that was like. So yeah, after like just hearing those things, and just, you know, when you learn the history, it's just kind of hard to ignore, or at least it is for me. And, you know, I still hold space for Christianity in my life in the name of my ancestors who were Christians, but my default and like main spiritual practice. I consider myself someone who follows African spiritual traditions. I'm not initiated in any particular spiritual space just yet, maybe. I don't know. I'm still like kind of figuring that out. But I do have like a mentor in a particular space that she's been kind of like nurturing me and watering me as a spiritualist, and I've just been so grateful for that. Just because, you know, I know in the beginning of a lot of people's journeys, everybody's looking for an elder. You know, you want to find an elder, somebody who can like mentor you and guide you, and you know, and it's kind of hard in the beginning because you're trying to figure it out, you're trying to learn. You know, you know, they say all these things like don't do this, but trust your intuition. But it's like, how can you trust your intuition when you don't know how to hone your intuition? And like, you know, sometimes you think you're trusting your intuition and then you get led astray, you know, and it happens. But you know, it's all a part of the journey, and you know, the right things will come to you in divine timing. But you know, I feel like within these last few years, I've had a lot of like breakthroughs and moments where I felt like if I've doubted myself as a spiritualist, or just, you know, doubting myself on like interpreting messages and signs like, and stuff like that, I've definitely had moments where it's like a confirmation. I was like, no, Nerese, like you seen that, you felt that, go with it. Even if you feel like you might be wrong, but you get a hunch to do something, or you get a hunch and you feel something, follow that and trust that. Because I will tell you, there's many times when I had gone against my intuition, just following things on surface value and listening to people on surface value, or just trusting certain people that I had trusted at one point, and my body would just feel off around them, or like my gut would just not feel okay. And you know, and I would just like be naive and gullible and easily influenced at that point in my life. You know, just hanging around people who I once considered friends, and you know, my intuition was telling me it ain't what it used to be, and it ain't what they saying. They might say this right here, but your spirit's saying something else, you know. And it took me a long time and many head bumps and, you know, mess ups for me to finally get that lesson. And you know, and when you are on this path, like, you have to trust your intuition, and you have to trust yourself, and you know that your energy is valuable, and you're, just because, not even on like a human level, you know, just being around the wrong people would just affect you spiritually. You know, even if, you know, things appear fun or it's cool at this one time in the moment, you know, but then you get caught up with, you know, and you realize like, damn, why is this happening in my life? Why am I feeling blocked here? Like, you know, why am I feeling this over here? And then it's like, yeah, because you was sharing your energy in spaces that you weren't supposed to, you know. So nowadays I'm very protective with my soul and my energy, and every now and then I might just like, you know, just check in on folks. But like, you know, when you learn as much and you go through certain things and you're learning to do your shadow work and overcome a lot of you know, a lot of your mistakes and just a lot of the things that went wrong in the past, and you're like, okay, you know, there's no room to be, of course you're not perfect, but there's no room to make the same mistakes if you know better, you know, even for the sake of fun or whatever the case may be. Because like, once you learn certain things, or once you have a understanding of how energy works around you and just how you see things fold within the universe, you know, you just can't do what's the word that I'm trying to say? You just can't be reckless with your energy. Like, you just can't, you know. When you know better, do better. And, you know, it's one thing when you make the same mistake every now and then, and if it's unintentional and you feel like you're doing the right thing and then it turns out another way, you know, that happens in life. But when you knowingly and willingly, you know, go back to people who don't treat you right, or, you know, and you go against your gut instinct, or you go into spaces where it's just like, you know, you've had issues here before, you know, stuff like that, which is like what I've dealt with. you know, you just you sometimes get it, you know, but when you know better, you do better. So yeah, that was kind of like my evolution spiritually. And nowadays I've done a lot of work to, you know, heal myself, just because I was like in a very dark space. But and if anybody's ever there, just know that it doesn't last long. It doesn't last forever. I'm gonna do another live when I talk about you know, karma and how that works through the universal laws, or at least how I think it does. Yeah. So yeah, I've just been, you know, keeping to myself and doing a lot of work in solitude, like inner healing work, shadow work, you know, just really digging deep and recognizing the issues that I've had within myself, issues that I've had in relationships, and just taking my hand in it and allowing certain things and not having boundaries, but then also forgiving people, even though you might not ever get that sorry, or even if they might not ever admit to hurting you, or, you know, whatever. That's one of the biggest things, and I'm still working through that. But because like resentment and all those low vibrational energies like depression and anger and all that, like, yes, it's okay to have that emotion, but when it's, don't be consumed by it. And I had to do the work to release and not let it consume me anymore, and grow from it and recognize, like, yes, I have these memories, yes, I had those experiences, but I'm not defined by it, and I don't hold on to it, and I don't claim it. Like, yes, it's something that I've been through, but it doesn't, I don't claim it. And when you're able to get to that point, man, the freedom, and just, you know, realizing that life is a choice. And what you choose to focus on is what your reality will be. You know, if you look at a rainy day, I mean, of course, don't be naive and don't be, you know, neglect the reality in front of you. But, you know, if you choose to see the brighter side, that's where your main frequency is going to be in your life. You know, like, yeah, sure, it might be a rainy day, but look at that rainbow over there. Or, you know, a rainbow might pop out. I'm gonna look forward to the rainbow. Yeah, I see it's raining, but you know what? My plants is getting watered. So hey, you know, I see the rain. Let me get my umbrella. You know, let me just, you know, let me make sure I'm okay. Let me make sure, you know, I'm gonna choose to see the good in it, but prepare myself for whatever the negative might be. And then you get better at protecting yourself, and you get better at, you know, trusting yourself, and knowing that it's okay to not have it all figured out. And then you trust, you know, not only yourself and your intuition, but you trust when you feel spirit and you hear spirit kind of leading you to something. And sometimes you feel like, I don't know, this might be, I don't know. But, you know, when you get that hunch and you get that feeling, just go with it. Because, you know, it helps you be better to be clear to hear. And it helps you trust yourself. So yes, I just kind of like went on for there. I'm not sure how long that was, but I mean, that's my spiritual background right now, a little bit. Well, that's a little bit of it. Another part of it that I won't get too much into is just like, I would say, like, note everything. You know, if you see something, if you get confirmations, especially like dreams. I've been told several times that I'm a dreamer. And like, and I didn't believe it. Well, not that I didn't believe it, but I was just like, okay, like, I know I get interesting dreams, and like, you know, sometimes they're really weird or sometimes they're really cool. But there's been like several times where I would have a dream about something and it would appear in one way, shape, or form, or get like a message through my dream or a vision through my dream, and it happens in reality, like in the near future. And at first I would just be like, oh, that's just coincidence. But when you're in the spiritual practice, ain't no coincidences. Like, pay attention to that. Because certain things could be guiding you and leading you and protecting you. And when you ignore that, sometimes you deal with certain situations that you didn't have to had you trusted your dream or trusted your gut instinct. And knowing that there's a difference between feeling fear and paranoia versus you being grounded and centered and feeling secure, but sensing that, there's a warning. There's two different things. And I will tell you, I was on both ends, feeling very anxious and certain things like that. But then when you're like, okay, hold on, let me just take a moment to breathe. Let me get centered. And just like trust what I'm feeling in that moment. Then, when you're at a point where you can really trust and be led by your intuition. So I'll have several moments like that where I'm just like, and the thing is, it'll happen like maybe in a few days ahead of each other, or like maybe in a few months or something like that. But like, and I know they say keep a dream journal, and I do, and every now and then, like, I'm getting back into being consistent with my dream journal, just because like sometimes I'll get dreams where I'm just like, I don't feel like dealing with that. But like you need to, because it can be a warning, or it can be just like a precaution, and you just need to be able to face the harder things. So I've been learning a lot of that and getting centered and grounding in that, and just knowing that the uncomfortable things are important to hear. So yeah. That's a little bit about my experience and background, and just like everything that I've evolved into in these last few years, and why you probably haven't seen me on here as consistently in the past. But now I'm definitely going to be a lot more active. I haven't been active these last few days just because I have an event coming up, and I've been doing a lot of, like, I was doing spiritual cleanses and floor washes and just like ritual work, and getting stuff together for this event that I have going on for my shop. Getting my inventory together. Actually, after here, I gotta get the new batch of rose water together, which I made last night. I'm just gonna be doing a ritual to kind of like charge it, especially with this new moon energy and Cancer, and it's Cancer season, so feel the emotions and the new journeys and all those things. And then I have work that I have to do on the website. So I've been working these last few days. So I haven't been as active on social media, but I did want to post and just kind of like reintroduce myself. And yeah, and I wanted to speak more about it, because there's but so much you can say on a post that you can write on there. But I feel like I wanted to speak more to my experience in my spiritual journey, especially the Christian side of things, because that's where a lot of my foundation was based out of. And just like, the honest truth on my feelings on getting to a point where I was just like completely like rejecting it, but then also realizing that you can still be a part of a journey of African spirituality and still hold space for your Christian ancestors or Christianity, if that's the background that you came from, and knowing that you can disagree with certain things, but you can still hold space for it in a way where there's there's respect. If you're into the alchemic side of things, using Psalms to charge energy into whatever ritual work you may be doing, or just with prayer, if you want to spend time with your ancestors, or just speak to spirit, and just knowing that you can always reference a message through the Bible. And honestly, I've memorized more passages in the Bible through African spirituality than I ever had in Christianity. So I just find that very interesting. And just knowing that, balance is everything. And, you can make however your journey needs to be work for you. So, yeah, that's that. And so now let's get into this reading. Child, I done finished the whole Nag Champa incense doing all this talking. Child. Okay, coming through alkaline water. So, mind you, I got my like shop table. I might show y'all after the reading. But yeah. Because I got like this whole setup right here, and I put together like a little a ghetto little table with one of my shipment boxes. But you know, I got a little cloth over here. I got my incense going. I got sage. But hold on, because you know, I wanted to make this a thing with my lives. Like, look, you know, in case there might have been any like trigger moments, or you know, just like present shadow work that might have come up, or just any emotions that may have triggered like low vibrations. I want to make it a thing to smudge to that. You know, so let's, you know, clear the space, cleanse the vibes, you know, all those things, you know, especially myself, because I did kind of, there was a little bit of shadow work upper in the healing that we did a moment ago for me, for those who watched the playback. But yeah, so yeah, that was my journey, my moment, my experience, my truth. You know, it was, and you know, that happens for a lot of people. Anybody, well, unless you like grow up into African spirituality, like, you know, but for those who, there's been a lot of people within the last few years who've grown up Christian and have, you know, left Christianity, or just kind of like transitioned from Christianity into ATRs. And you know, I would say we're in a very interesting time. I know it's the age of Aquarius, gang, because your girl's an Aquarius, okay? Air sign, you know, we got the, okay, I had to get the tat, you know, because I'm dedicated. But you know, it's age of Aquarius, which, you know, is basically how ages work. Is I forget I don't really know how to explain the placement of the planets, but basically, every like about, I think like 200 years or so, I have a book on it, so I will read it the next time so I can be exact on the details. But it's a span of time where we're in the particular zodiac zone, and age of Aquarius is very, there's how do I explain this? You know, there's going to be a lot of like technical or technological advances in evolution as a people, a lot of innovative things, thoughts, spaces, ideologies, and from a minor scale to a major scale, I feel like there's going to be a lot of shift in society in terms of how we see things and how we internalize information and how we present information in spaces, and just certain things that we allow and don't. I mean, as you can see with these last few years, like the younger generation, like Gen Z, like I commend those kids, because they're a generation that, you know, can take information. I mean, granted, they have access to technology and stuff like that, so they can look up whatever. And sometimes that can be good or bad, because sometimes you look up certain things and be led astray and it's not clear information, and then certain things you could look up and it's like, you know, you could fact check. And I feel like those kids, you know, can grow up, you know, hearing the influence of, like, you know, whoever may be raising them, whether it be their parents or whoever, and then have their own ideology of certain things and be like, you know what, I hear you and I've grown up hearing this, but I don't agree with that, or, you know, or I don't subscribe to that. And, you know, be bold enough to even do that, because I feel like for generations we just kind of like settled with what was given to us as kids, and, you know, have dealt with this generational inheritance of information and just tradition and stuff like that. And some of it is good, and then some of it is not, and that's why we break generational curses. And I feel like this generation of kids are like breaking them early, where they're just like, they have the frame of mind to, you know, have their own thoughts and be independent thinkers and challenge certain ideas and challenge, you know, the information that's given to them. And I feel like that's very powerful, especially to have young, because I feel like that's something that I've learned recently. I mean, granted, like, I mean, yes, when I was younger, like I mentioned earlier, you know, being in my journey and just, or, you know, in Christianity and just questioning certain things, I'm like, wait, that don't make sense to me. In certain spaces, I felt compelled to do that, but I wasn't really as outspoken. And, you know, I wasn't really somebody that disrupted things. I would be, certain things I would question, like, intellectually, but when I would see or be with people that I trusted, for the most part, you know, I would see certain things where I'm just like, I don't think you're right about that. Or, I don't know, I feel like we might not be going in the right direction. And in those certain times where I felt like I could have spoken up and said something, I didn't. Even though I knew intuitively or intellectually that I felt like they might have been wrong, or, you know, there was worth something else to be mentioned or questioned in that. So, you know, I shout out to them kids today, because that's very powerful and it's a beautiful thing to see and have. So yeah. Anyway, I'm rambling. Let's get into this read. So I am going to burn another stick of incense for the sake of this